Hello, and welcome to the Empowering Law Firm Leaders podcast, where we'll be talking to experts across the legal sector to discover the mindsets, behaviours, skills, and digital tools that are needed to run a successful modern law firm. I'm Amy Bruce, host and marketing director at Osprey Approach. And today I'm joined by non-practicing solicitor, now business owner, a client experience and business development coach and trainer for law firms, who is also an advisory committee member for the Law Society, Emma Edgerton-Jones. Welcome, Emma. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks for inviting me.
So today we'll be discussing how law firms can enhance their client experience to improve their business development efforts. We'll cover how to overcome the common business development challenges, and how to ensure you're delivering an excellent client service that helps you retain clients for longer. And we'll also discuss how to avoid talking solely about costs to clients, how to gain more confidence in conversation, and the emotional drivers of buying behaviour. So, Emma, tell me a little bit about your background and experience that's led you to where you are today.
Oh, where to start? I think it's been a bit of a whirlwind, to be honest. I've been in the legal industry for just shy of 20 years now. So the first big chunk of time there was as an employment law solicitor, which I absolutely loved. But I did find that I was persistently concerned about the business side of the firm. And in the 2008 recession, I think that became a real kind of thirst for knowledge about how I could really improve the firm and drive it forward. And I was really fortunate, I think, to be in an environment where that was encouraged and supported, to have that input in the business. I think then we jump forward to about 2015, really, where I was invited to consider a non-fee earning role at management level in another firm. And it was going to allow me to focus really on strategic and development work full time. And I think they must have caught me on a good day, because I must have been feeling uncharacteristically bold. I'm an overthinker by nature, but I took the leap and left fee earning at that point. And that role really allowed me to develop that knowledge base and use it with what was then a network of 120 law firms that I was able to work with in that role. And then I think really it was the pandemic. Like so many people that I speak to, the pandemic was really the catalyst for starting as my own business. I just started to get phone calls from people that I'd worked with previously, basically saying, we don't know what to do. Like, we need your skill set. And I guess I must have believed that if the world starts asking you if you offer consultancy services, maybe you should be offering consultancy services. Maybe there was something in that. So it was as simple as that, really. I kind of followed that calling. And I think because the post-pandemic market was so clearly going to demand an increased awareness of experience as a concept, I then went on to gain a certification as a customer experience professional to really give me that toolbox to help organisations of any size, really, to look at improving that client experience aspect. I still found that every now and again I would walk away from a firm and I would just think they're not going to get any of the value from what they've just invested in. And that kind of became a real niggle for me. And it wasn't necessarily because I didn't believe that the strategies were right for them. It was that the fee earners on the ground either lacked the buy-in or the skills, or they had personal blockages that just weren't going to allow them to actually deliver those strategies consistently. So that led me to go on to a coaching qualification, which is just the best thing I've ever done. So it allows me now to coach the fee earners through any personal blockages. Now, sometimes that's very directly linked to the client experiences BD categories. So it could be having confidence, having cost conversations, or networking, or how to build relationships. Or it can be more personal development aspects, like dealing with overwhelm, fatigue cycles, social anxiety, picking up the phone, things like that. So I think that's allowed me to develop a really holistic approach to the development of law firms, which gets really great results for client firms throughout the UK, but also now I do GC and lawyer coaching internationally, and I just find it so fulfilling. I feel very blessed to be doing what I do now. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I mean that was definitely a sign to go it alone, and what a great transformation to know that you're clearly in the right place. You feel that way, you're in the right place, and I guess thank God for the firm originally to allow you to explore that and give you the permission to explore the sort of business development, business side of things. So Yeah, it makes you an absolute expert of what we're going to be talking about today. So thank you so much for joining me. We typically like to jump in just to some quick takeaways. We hope listeners can stay around till the end, but if they can't, after working in and with thousands of lawyers, probably, what would you say are the top three essential elements of running a successful modern law firm?
Oh, it's a good question. I'm not brilliant at quick takeaways because I always think there's so much to say on everything. But I think my first one would have to be being people centric. So I know client centric is a real buzz expression at the moment, but we've just got to look more broadly than that. So achieving sustainable high performance in our law firms is actually quite difficult because law attracts ambitious high achievers that have a tendency to just work harder and harder to climb up the ladder. And we need to upskill them so that they're doing the right things and drawing out the best in them so that the team's thriving without just taking on more and more. So I think it's about developing a whole culture of people first at all levels. So with the clients and with your team, and the clients really pick up and feel on that. And I think that just leads to a better overall experience for everybody. Second, I think would be being business focused, which sounds so simple. Of course, we should be business focused, but I think everybody in the firm should really understand what it needs to be a legal business. Like, what does it mean to be a business that sells law? And should make sure that they have the skills to play their part in that. Do they all know how to develop work? Do they know how to protect the profit? Do they know how we make profit? Do they know how they can boost cash flow? And everybody needs to have that sense of collective responsibility for that. And also encouraging the legal entrepreneurs, just like I was fortunate enough to have a firm that did that for me. Allow the people who've got that natural instinct to explore those ways of working so that you're keeping the firm agile. And I think that leads really into the third one for me, which won't be a surprise to anybody that knows me, but I'm going to say experience. How do people experience your firm? So client experience is obviously a great way to ensure that we have that stable workflow and are really getting the most out of our clients, which I'm sure we'll go on to talk about today. But also our employee experience. So that empowering staff so that we're ultimately retaining them. I just think it's so exciting for me, the geek that I am, to work with service orientated leadership teams who really understand that they're actually there to serve their team and their clients and get the best out of them. So I think when we can stay really open and curious about how we can improve experience for anybody that's experiencing the firm in any way, that curiosity really leads to a natural innovation that aligns with the employees and the client need. And it just all starts to work together really nicely. And I think that's the thing. It's also connected. It's quite a carefully balanced ecosystem, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that we've already used the word curious. I think that's my favorite word of all time, because I think it applies to so many things and can not only helps the person who's being curious, but helps the person on the other end to have just a really great experience, whether that's a discussion about an inquiry or whether that's a discussion about from an existing client point of view. I think that word just, yeah, is a brilliant place to start.
I think whenever you come across someone who's challenging or a situation that's challenging, if you can just remind yourself to step back into curiosity and think, right, I'm curious about why this person is feeling this way, your response is always better. And professionally, it can be really
Mm.
helpful when you're dealing with complaints or challenging clients. Like, just stay curious. Why is this person feeling so passive aggressive today, or whatever it might be? It can really help you to access the skills you need to deal with that conversation. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of curiosity.
Mm. And it links so perfectly with your people-centric approach, almost human-centric approach across the board, in that curiosity enables you to dig deeper and be slightly more emotional and get deeper into the real reasons why people are behaving or acting this way. I think that definitely forms the basis of a great successful law firm is to be people focused. And I love that, of course, you decided to go down your mentorship coaching qualification to allow you to have those deeper conversations to help people personally with their skills. Because without that, it's all good and well having these business strategies in place, but if nobody feels prepared or confident or ready to tackle these things or have the skills to do it, the strategy is almost pointless.
Absolutely. And there have been occasions where I've had long meetings with firms and said, look, you're going to invest all this money in consultancy, but if we don't address that skills gap post pandemic, you're going to be wasting your money. And I'm quite frank about that. I think it has to be quite a holistic approach. And firms are getting so much more proactive about that. We're really seeing some great shifts happening, and I just love to see that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really good to hear. And of course, we've sort of touched on this already, but winning new business and building quality client relationships are intrinsically linked to experience and delivering a good experience. The care and the service you provide, of course, impacts your business development success. So, I guess I just wanted to first touch on what's your distinction between like client care, your service levels, your experience. Can we just lay that out as a start point?
Yeah. So I think we have a tendency to wrap those things all up together: client care, service level, experience. And it absolutely makes sense because that's how the client experiences it, literally. But I think when we're actively looking for improvements in our firm, or looking to run development initiatives or BD activities, it can really serve us to separate those three limbs out as different core elements. So if we think about client care right at the top of that pile, it's actually not really care at all, is it? It's the codes of conduct, the regulatory aspects, the compliance stuff. It's the have to do's that most people hate. Um, that's distinct from service level, which kind of sits in the middle. Now, this is where most law firms focus the bulk of their efforts. Service level. What do we actually do for the client? The functional, operational delivery of what the client's paying for. And the reason we focus a lot of development work here is because if we do this well, service levels what generates highly satisfied clients. And that's what we want, right? It's great. It's what most firms strive for. We have great feedback surveys, great testimonials. We get a short-term flurry of word of mouth recommendations, maybe a great review, maybe a legal 500 referee. It's what we're striving for. But it's a relatively short-term impact. Ultimately, after that flurry, because the market is so competitive now, that client's essentially back in that fluid market for next time. They haven't really connected to you or become loyal to you, and maybe we're not even memorable long-term at that point. And I think that's where this third limb becomes so powerful. So client experience is about separating and considering, taking into account those service level and client care elements. What is the emotional impact of every interaction your client has with your brand, and how does it make them feel? And this is what drives clients to be really connected to us as a firm. And if we do it well, those fully connected clients go on to spend more, to pay faster, and actively go out and look for opportunities to sell you and support your business. They become real advocates of the firm. Yet so many firms aren't necessarily thinking about this aspect in any meaningful way. So I think it can be quite powerful, and you can gain quite a good advantage in a competitive world by kind of stepping back a little bit and just thinking, how does this amazing work we've done at service level impact the client emotionally? And actually, if we think about it from their perspective, are there things actually that still we haven't seen and adjusted? And 9 times out of 10 there is, even if it's just a small element that's a bit stressful for the client, where maybe we could have offered some additional reassurance. There's always something in there that emotionally is hitting the client in a way we haven't considered.
We talked on something similar in episode one with Simon McCrum, and he said one of the key reasons why um, law firms' cash flow is affected is because we think of clients as almost one and done. We don't consider them holistically as a relationship to enable them to come back. What are the upsell, cross-sell opportunities? And I guess what you're saying there is the only way to really take advantage of that is if your experience as a whole delivers an emotional connection, else they're not going to want to upsell and be cross-sold to. Okay, so you have your three areas, your client care. These are the sort of fundamentals, essentials that all lawyers have to deliver. You have your service levels, which are typically where law firms are spending a lot of their time. And then you have the client experience, which is how people connect emotionally. I think that's a really good way to segment that out and make it feel more of a doable solution, that you've got three areas to look at. So yeah, thank you for starting there. One of the sort of stats that's going around in the market, in particular Nexus Bellwether report, stated that 63% of SMEs plan to grow organically over the next 5 years. Maybe that has an impact from the sort of COVID days, but 67% of leaders stated that attracting new business is actually a really significant challenge. So what are the common business development challenges that you see when you first speak to law firms, and what are some of maybe the key solutions to help overcome them?
Yeah, I think that the relationship building in a more digital world is a real shift post-pandemic and presents a really big challenge for law firms. I think the most common thing we see in firms that we go in to work with is that they're using old methods in a new market. And so I know it's said all the time, but it's that classic situation of doing things because we always have done and they've always worked for us. It's a well-oiled machine. We're in a rhythm with it. We can cope with it. But the results are just starting to naturally drip off. They're not necessarily getting in front of the audience they used to. Their activities might not be quite aligned with the strategies that they've got or having the impact that they want. And so I think it's about really stopping and asking, why are we doing something? What is it that we're trying to achieve? Does this directly link to what we're trying to do, who we're trying to target at the moment? Is it generating work? Is it moving the needle? Is it working for us? Because otherwise we fall into this trap of just doing more and more to attract essentially the same amount of clients or less. And we're already doing a lot more as an industry. And I think that's probably the second challenge that we should talk about is that we have increased demands in lawyers at every level, and we really need to minimize them more. So we are more accessible, we're more responsive, more efficient, more productive. The clients just demand more and expect more. And so if our methods aren't right and we're also doing more and more BD activities, just not sustainable. Lawyers are exhausted. And when we're selling people's minds, we really need to give them that time to rest. I've got an expression which I use far too much, but it's not letting that pressure push out the presence. And
Mm.
actually, when we're under pressure, we're not necessarily building relationships in effective ways. So again, I think zooming out and properly assessing what is working for our firm. Let's do a bit of an assessment. Let's look at the data. Let's ditch the wasted effort and really teach our team how to do BD activities really effectively with a bit of structure, reduce the cognitive load in the way that they work so that they can just calm everything down a little bit more and have more impact with less activity. So when people have a bit more space and a bit more time, they can actually develop BD routines and habits that are more consistent and create the space to develop maybe less relationships, but really effectively. Because I think that's probably my third challenge. It's quite hard to pick three at the moment because it is a challenging market. But I think it's also that kind of conflict, that demand for efficiency and increased value. I think it results in what I call an arm's length client journey. So we've got a lot less personal interaction. And we see this a lot with bigger law firms where they've invested really heavily in tech. So perhaps they've got client portals, you can access your own updates, or in areas that are quite process driven, like conveyancing, where actually it's possible to be really quick and efficient and deal with most things by email. But these areas, sometimes they see a drop off in that work, or it's getting harder to win the work. And as we've said, the clients are pretty fluid and back in the market afterwards, exposed to increased competition where they could go anywhere. And it gives us this client retention challenge that a lot of us are talking about. So I think it's really important that law firms think about how they can deliver those efficiencies and the value that's being demanded, but without diluting their relationships and connection. And it's quite hard to do both, right? We really need to be quite intentional about it. And I think often in law, we've evolved to a situation where our BD isn't always that intentional. We know we have to do content and articles. We know we have to have lunches with multipliers and intermediaries, but actually we're being intentional about the kind of relationships and the way in which we cultivate them. And there are lots of strategies that we can do to really pull in those clients and make them loyal to the firm and create time and space to allow people to actually consistently work on things. Because I do think the time pressure is a blocker to lots of this. We've got to calm everything down and make it really effective.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be, you can't have creative, innovative thoughts if you're always under pressure and thinking of the next task. And of course, business development links with marketing, but as a whole, to build relationship, it requires a creative, emotional aspect of the brain that is just overwhelmed if we're thinking about the next task and doing, the next thing and doing more and more and more and feeling that pressure. And I guess you touched on tech there. The tech can help with that, but we've got to make sure that it doesn't overlap and over prioritize from that human element and that additional touch point.
100%. And even just the way we work is perhaps a bit of a tangent, but we're a relatively overstimulated profession. We're on screens all day. And actually, like you said about giving the brain space to think and innovate, when we're in a mildly adrenalized state all the time, that kind of real productivity where perhaps your hands shake a little bit and we're really busy plowing through the work and ticking things off the list, we're actually in a mild stress response that's preventing us from accessing any of that creativity and innovation in the brain at all. But we can actually trick our brains into dropping us back down into an executive state that really allows us to use all those aspects of the brain and separate our work up in ways that encourage, social aspects, creative aspects, and technical aspects separately as far as is possible, so that the brain's really getting a chance to transition well. So yeah, the art of stillness is one that is very lost at the moment, I think. And I've been mentioned another consultant, Darren Francis, has recently posted about this kind of creating the space to think, the art of doing nothing and stillness, and really powerful stuff today. We just don't get that time to just think. So
Mm, it's really difficult. And to be honest, I get my best ideas typically on a walk, which probably says a lot because you're not distracted and you're in that sort of flow. But I guess it also comes back to your first challenge and first point of just taking stock, reviewing what's working, reviewing what isn't, and asking ourselves the question, why do we do it the way we do it? I think typically you get caught up in the day to day and it worked for you, like you said, a year ago, 6 months ago. Is it still working for you now? Have things moved on? Is it time to consider if that's still working for you? I guess it's also about considering who you want to be as a firm. I guess values sort of play a big part in this. How do you want to deliver your services? What do you stand for? I guess that intertwines too.
oh, massively. Yeah. And it's really important that people understand how to articulate that, which I know lots of consultants talk about. And it's difficult. It has to be an intentional exercise to kind of train that skill so that you're able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess having values as a firm and delivering value to clients takes us nicely onto talking about cost and almost feeling pressured to discuss costs straight away or navigating prospects who push for free advice. I know that's a key challenge that lawyers face. What are your tips for helping to avoid those, for navigating away and delivering that value?
Oh, well, I think if I knew the key to never having to discuss costs or give free advice with the client, I think I'd be a very, very rich lady. I think clients are always going to naturally push for that. So we have to get to grips with how we deal with it, because if you know that the person you're chatting to on the phone holds all the information you need just in their head, and they can just tell you they're on the phone, why wouldn't you assume that if you chat to them enough and draw it out of them, they're going to give you the response that you need? So as lawyers, I think we have to take a bit of responsibility for gateguarding that value and helping the client understand why they need to pay for that aspect. I think there's quite a few bits to look at in relation to how we do that. So I think it's really important that we make sure that our messaging is right, firstly. So you're always going to get clients that naturally want to draw out that free advice. But what we can do is make sure we're not creating an expectation that there'll be free advice in the way that we market our services. So making sure we're not using expressions like free consultations, free meetings, call us free. We need to make sure it's not making an expectation that there won't be any charge, but we do need to reassure them that they won't be charged unless they know that the work is going to be charged for. That's an awful lot of charge in one sentence. But it's basic psychology, particularly with lawyers, for clients to be really fearful about what it's going to cost. We haven't got a great reputation when it comes to transparency and pricing. So particularly in the current economy where people are really price sensitive and really value driven, we do need to let them know it's going to be a no obligation basis and you'll be aware of any costs before they're incurred. So give us a chat, take that pressure off them, but make sure there's no expectation that it's free. I think the second thing that I commonly see people struggling with is when they actually contact the firm, you're on a phone call with a prospect, and we're not positioning ourselves as an expert from the outset of the call. So we have a tendency, I think, to try and impress clients that we want to win with our knowledge and our advice by giving them that advice on the phone. And it's a really intentional shift to tell ourselves that we won't do that and to gateguard that advice. So we need to take control of the conversation quite early on, because whoever's going to ask the questions is going to have most of the power in that call. They're going to direct the call, and they're going to ask about cost, and they're going to ask their legal questions because it's naturally what they need the answer to. So we have to make sure we're not auditioning the work, and that we position ourselves very quickly to lead that call. And that can be as simple as just having that confidence to almost set out the agenda of how you're going to run the call. And sometimes that involves almost stopping the client and claiming back that control. They are looking for a confident expert. So I think we could be a little bit less fearful about doing that. And it could be as simple as just saying, I understand that this is a really stressful situation for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a little bit of a chat about the circumstances. You can tell me what's going on, and tell me a bit about your business. And then I can ask you some questions that help me understand a bit more about the legal issues. And then I can let you know what your options might be, the costs associated with them. And hopefully by the end of the call, you'll have what you need to move forward, and we can get this situation sorted out for you. And that gives you an agenda which you can pull the client back to if they start just going on and on about some aspect that's been stressful for them. You can say, that's brilliant, but I'd really like to make sure I can help you today. So if I could just ask you a few questions. They know it, they anticipate it, they're prepared for it, and you're the confident expert guide in that call. Inevitably, they are going to come back to asking those legal questions and trying to get that free advice. And that's where that holding the boundary piece comes in. So I think there is absolutely nothing wrong with saying, unfortunately, for insurance and regulatory reasons, I can't give you the detailed advice you need on this call, but I can certainly talk you through the process, give you an idea of the costs and the options, and then we can get a meeting set up for you. I'll take care of onboarding you as a client. We can give you all that advice that you need to get it all sorted out. There's nothing wrong with being clear that actually both of us need to be protected for us to get into the meat of that. And that's a paid for service. You don't have to say it in so many words, but you can certainly control and gateguard that value. And in terms of the conversations about cost, you've already mentioned, Amy, about protecting the value that the firm is offering and understanding how to articulate that. And I think that's really, really important. And so when we get into that section of the call where we're talking about costs and options, or we're talking about it in a meeting, we have to remember that it isn't just a price. And this is where, again, those arm's length communications where we're just giving a quote by email, we lose a bit of the benefit there, because we're less able to do that unless it's a very well written email. So if we just give a client a price, this service costs X, all they know is that they can compare your price with their price, and it's just a price to price comparison. They don't actually know what they're getting for that price. And it's up to us to make it really easy for the client to see what the price is for. So I can buy Tesco baked beans for 43p, and I still pay £1.40. I couldn't believe, I had to check how much it was for a tin of Heinz beans. £1.40. I still pay it for Heinz baked beans. Many people do. Now, if you were to give me just 2 aluminium cans that were unlabeled, unbranded, and said, would you like to pay 43p or £1.40 for this can? Of course I will say 43p, because I don't know what's inside. I don't know what the product is or why I would pay more. This is no different. And I think if we think about that positioning, they might say, if we're cheaper down the road, I can get this service elsewhere for less. You absolutely understand that, but be confident in your positioning in the market. And actually, from a client perspective, if you want a toaster, you can buy one in Home Bargains, or you can buy it from John Lewis. Why do people still buy it from John Lewis? Well, it's associated with quality, good customer service, extended warranties. You know they'll sort out a problem if they have one. It might even butter the toast for your children, who knows? But there is a value there that people are still drawn to. So if your firm is more expensive, just be confident explaining why you're the John Lewis. Another skill that's really important is being able to connect the value to the meaning for that specific client, their wants, fears, and needs. And the joy of taking control of that conversation early on is that you are allowing them to talk to you about what's stressful about the situation first before you ask your narrowing questions. So that you can then link that to what's really important for them. I know this is stressful for you because of X, Y, and Z. And that's where we can really add value for you, because we're specialists in that area. We do this kind of work in this way. And you're empowering them then to make an informed choice. Just saying our hourly rates are X, our fixed fees X, our value-based price is X, however you do your pricing model, all they can do is compare you on price. And you're only going to lose on price then if you're not the cheapest, which isn't always what the clients want.
I have been scribbling notes because I knew I wouldn't be able to remember everything. And there's so many good points in there that I sort of want to come back to. And actually, I just want to touch back on curiosity because I think that's the key part of being able to add that value and make it personal. If you've not asked those questions and you've not been curious enough to go slightly further, you're never going to know why this service is so key for them.
And another point, that pressure pushing out the presence, right? When we're under pressure and we're picking up the phone, yes, fine, yes, we can help you with that. It'll be this much money. No, that's fine. Of course, you're going to phone around. Off you go. I'm going to carry on with the drafting I was doing. It's another reason to really be present and try and connect with the client in that moment, because it's really quite powerful. They are under a lot of stress, and sometimes it's taken people days, weeks, or even months to actually pick up the phone and try and secure some legal advice. So being the person who's a little bit more present, a little bit more patient, can be really quite powerful, as long as we're keeping an eye on how much control we're letting the client take in that call, so they're not sucking all of our time. But yeah, I think curiosity and presence is really important at that inquiry stage.
Yeah, I think the other word that's coming out of here is control. And
Mm.
I wrote that down before I'd made a note of that before you said the word as you were talking about positioning, because I just thought, yeah, we've got to make sure is that I think the fear takes over in that we feel that the customer is in control and that the customer can dictate to us how to provide the service or how to price for the service. Whereas actually, like you said, we're the experts in this. We can take control and set the agenda, set the questions, set the expectations, which also I think is really key here. And one of the other sort of points I noted down was honesty, and I guess that links to the expectations. Just simply being honest up front.
Yeah,
It's a great way to not only win over the client's trust, but also to set those boundaries.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And I guess you can't truly be honest if you're not prepared to ask the right questions. If you don't ask the right questions, you can't set out what is truly applicable for them.
And I think that's where people struggle, is having that confidence to do that. I've already mentioned that lawyers are, by their very nature, achievers, high performers, can often sit with personality traits that are perfectionists, that are very driven by achievement. They want to please. We see a lot of people pleasing traits that hold people back in law. And so I think as we find this struggle to win clients and that becomes a challenge, we can end up actually doing the reverse of what will help us reduce the impact of those traits, by trying to please the client, tell them what they want to hear, try to win them. And actually, that client is looking for someone who will take control and reduce the stress for them 9 times out of 10. And just saying, I've got this, I do this all the time, this is how we're going to have this conversation, this is what I need to know to help you as fast as possible, it's sometimes what they're looking for. So I think sometimes it's just about really unlocking that potential in people and helping them see how they can use all that conscientiousness that they've got to really drive themselves forward and make life easier.
Yeah, I think I guess it's one of the reasons why I've also not dipped my toe into the sales world, having lived in the marketing world for a very long time, is that confidence and that fear sort of holds you back. And I know the confidence in communicating is a big challenge that you see, and it's not just the legal sector that experiences it. I think the digital interaction isn't helping either with COVID, people not being out on site as much, and to be honest, dealing with online conversations is can be quite difficult to navigate. So, how can lawyers who aren't trained to sell have more confidence in talking with prospects, in successfully negotiating price or talking about scoping conversations or just simply setting a clear agenda and expectations?
If we think about this from a personal development aspect, and in my work I separate out that business development from firm development and personal development, I think there would be three key limbs. I think the first is that competence piece, because it's a skill just like any other. You can learn confidence, you can learn negotiation and sales, and it's upskilling is a great way to improve that belief in yourself, because a lot of it is linked to how good we think we are at something. So giving yourself the toolbox that you need to know how to have those confident conversations, to properly scope, price, and negotiate really confidently, and talk about your value is really, really important. So I think the first thing would be to upskill so that you feel competent that what you're doing is right. The second thing would be, just as you said in your question, the confidence piece. Confidence is really just your ability, belief in your own ability to figure things out. And the more we figure things out, the more confident we get. And you can learn confidence. People think that they lack confidence, therefore they cannot. And actually, you can learn it. You just might need a bit more structure than other people. So there's actually quite a simple formula that we use in coaching, which is literally just confidence equals intention plus action plus consistency, which sounds so simple, but the intention is about deciding, how am I going to show up in this conversation? I'm going to be calm, reassuring, confident, and a competent lawyer that's really happy to drive this pricing conversation. And just reminding yourself of those intentions before you go in. So you're kind of adopting that persona, even if it doesn't feel like you quite yet. The action part for some people is just, I'm going to have this call in line with those intentions and I'm going to behave in that way. But if you're really starting just to build confidence at the outset, then it could be that you need more of a conversion conversation framework to really guide you through that call and that agenda we've already talked about. So my positioning, this is what I'm going to say in relation to that. This is how I assess the impact on the client, the benefits for them, the options. My options for this kind of work are probably going to be this. This is how I'm going to have my costs conversation. And then this is what I'm going to say to end the call. And you wouldn't use it like a script. It's just a prompt to guide you through it, so you kind of keep on track and pull the client back. And then the consistency part is about repeating it until your brain starts to believe it and starts to look for it. So in this cost conversation scenario, it might be that you use that framework and adjust it slightly every time you run a call, and until it starts to become really natural and you start to understand what expressions and what ways of saying things start to really resonate with the clients and get good results, and just use it consistently. In other areas with building confidence, it could be that you need to just build small daily, weekly, quarterly habits that develop the skills so that you start to believe that you're good at it. And so if you do that intention setting plus action plus consistency in any area of life, you gradually start to believe that actually you might be able to do this thing, and then you can extend it to other areas. The third piece that sits with all of that is that no amount of confidence work will stick if you don't address that self-esteem and mindset piece. And actually, this is more of a problem in law than people think. I think we're generally associated with being quite an arrogant profession. But understanding that you are worthy of the client's time and money, whatever level of the firm you're in, you are worth the fee that you're asking for. You've got to believe that, because if you don't believe it, why would the client believe it? And that affects everything about how you sell your price to the client. Because if you think it's expensive, a subtle little, "Ooh," as you say it, or "I'm really sorry, but this is going to cost this," the client needs to know that you know you're worthy of the time and money and have confidence in that too. So that mindset piece sometimes has to come first if it's something that you really struggle with.
Yeah, those 3 points that equal confidence, the intention, action, and consistency, I've written those down because I'm going to be taking those into my own life. But is there an element, especially in the intention piece, that is a bit of fake it till you make it?
I think so. I think it comes down a little bit to confirmation bias. I think when
Mm.
we tell ourselves constantly that we lack confidence, we can't do that, we're not confident enough, our brain starts to look for all the evidence that says we're not. And you just start to believe it's true, I can't because. And so you really have to persuade your brain to start looking for the evidence that you are. So fake it until you make it is a great way of just reminding yourself, just keep pretending until you believe it. But it's actually true. Your brain will start to look for that evidence that you can do it, it's working, and actually maybe you can do these things. And that's why that action and consistency is so important, because if you do it once and you take the action, it doesn't really have much impact. Whereas if you do it really consistently, your brain through neuroplasticity will literally start to rewire until you start to think, no, I am a confident person in this area. You have to then extend it to the other areas of life till it's more holistic. But it's such a simple framework to use, but genuinely starts to change the composition of the way you think about yourself. So yeah, I get a bit carried away because it excites me that you can really reprogram your brain to believe that you can act in a different way.
Yeah, you need to give yourself the evidence, like you said, those nuggets of I can do this, for your brain to start telling you, and it becomes less faking it and more making it. And I think actually it's good to know that in the action section, you talked about having a really clear structure, having a potential script guidance, that's a good place to start, because I guess people may consider that they shouldn't have to have that, or they shouldn't need that to be able to be successful. But actually, most people do start there. I think even really good salespeople have a typical script or structure that they follow to be successful in that. So it's kind of comforting to know that that's a good place to start.
100%. I think we've got a large percentage of introverts in our industry, and it's not natural to us to do this aspect. A lot of people longing for the days where the knowledge was the power and we could just be the clever people and not have to deal with sales. But it is a skill that you develop, and actually knowing how to talk about the firm's value or pricing isn't something that comes naturally. We're not taught it at law school. So actually writing yourself 3 or 4 bullet points for that section, and then maybe even saying to a partner, like, is there anything that you say that I've missed here that I could use? And 9 times out of 10, the partner's never thought about it either. And actually, there's 3 or 4 sentences that over the course of their career they've developed that they use that almost always resonates with the client, that they can just give you like that. And suddenly you say, oh, hang on, let's copy this document across the whole team so that everybody knows that actually that's a really valuable statement to be able to get into a conversation. And for some people, that's enough. 3 or 4 statements that they know are powerful that they can use in conversations. So it's whatever level of support you feel you need to gain that confidence and keep you on track.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it goes back to being curious, I suppose.
Yes.
Asking the people who are successful in, why are you successful? What questions are you asking? What gets you there?
Let's just cancel the interview and just tell everybody to be curious and
Yeah, definite key takeaway from this. One of the ways you do help lawyers and firms is to get more impact from the work they already do. One of the things you discuss is the emotional drivers of buying behavior, and how firms can tap into this. So can you share what those 6 emotional drivers are, and how they impact law firms specifically?
Yeah, so to offer a bit of background on them, Harvard Business Review did this extensive research study, and they basically found that there were 300 emotional drivers that were essential to client experience. And some global brands, academic institutions kind of all got together and consolidated these. It was impossible to work with that many. And they came up with 6 core drivers that have the biggest impact on actually connecting customers into your business and ultimately influencing their buying behaviors. And when you take those 6, you apply them to law firms, it just makes sense. So I use these quite routinely with law firms with relatively good results, but they will sound so simple when you say them that you will just think, well, of course we do that. But actually, just like separating out service level and experience, you start to think about things in a different way. So the first key driver is obviously trust. No surprises there. But there are lots and lots of ways that we build and lose trust through a client journey that we might not even consider. And so when you actually ring fence it to look at it through, particularly where we've got quite an arm's length journey, how could we build and reinforce trust there? Actually, we lost a bit of trust there. It's very powerful. The second driver is that clients want you to know them. And this looks a little bit different depending on how big your firm is. It could be the people, what they like, how they are. It could be their segment of the market. It could be their industry. But it's always their problems, their wants, and their needs. And that gives you a significant advantage in almost everything you do. So that's a really important one, knowing them. The third driver is make it easy. This is my favorite one out of everything. Remove the friction at any point in the client journey or the process. Just make everything feel easy for them. The fourth is they really want you to get them. They want you to be the legal team that just gets it. And actually, sometimes you see that in a review and you're like, they're doing it, they're getting it right because they just get it. And this is that presence piece. You're connecting, you're empathizing, you're understanding them and their business. And it's that emotional intelligence piece that we're seeing a lot of people realizing the importance in our industry. So taking that time to really connect with the client. The fifth is deliver. They want you to deliver what they expect you to deliver. And that's a lot about meeting the expectations that we're creating ourselves in the marketplace. So let's meet them. If you say you have a 2-hour callback guarantee, you absolutely need to deliver a 2-hour callback guarantee. Otherwise, you're falling at the first hurdle. So let's always meet their expectations. If we can exceed them, brilliant. but let's meet them consistently and make sure we're always delivering, so we're protecting that trust we're building. And the sixth one sometimes surprises people, because the sixth driver that's really important to people is that you can fix things when they go wrong. So clients don't actually expect you to be perfect. There's quite a lot of research that shows when things go wrong and problems are fixed well with transparency and integrity and openness, it's actually trust amplifying. So they trust you more because that time it went wrong, you sorted it out. And that's just an easy and honest way to hold your relationship. So if you can solve their problems and fix any failings along the way, then you're onto a winner. So they're as simple as that. Those six drivers: you've got your trust, getting to know them, making it easy for them, making them feel really understood and like you get it, delivering what you've promised you're going to deliver, fixing any problems along the way. So simple. We should all be doing those things anyway, but just looking at them in isolation throughout a full client journey is really, really powerful.
I'm glad you covered all six again, because I was writing notes, but you're going to make a far better job than I am. Yeah, and you're right, they do feel really obvious. And I guess just going back to your 3 points earlier about client care, service level, client experience, is this where the client experience comes in? Is this where you can have the impact on the client experience?
This is essentially a client experience framework. If you can hit all of these six drivers really consistently, really well with the bulk of your clients, you are going to fully connect them to your law firm. And rather than going kind of up that client journey staircase and straight out the top, being fluid in the market, maybe highly satisfied, but not particularly connected, you'll actually create a cyclical system where they're going out, advocating for you, selling your services, they're dropping in new clients straight into your conversion process and repeat business themselves. And so it's a no-brainer to try and build that loyalty, build that connection, and really draw them in with those six drivers that will really make them feel that sense of connection to the brand.
They become your sales and marketing team themselves if you've got this in place.
Absolutely, absolutely. Which
And I
makes it,
guess,
sorry, I was just going to say, it makes it much better in terms of that doing more and more to attract more clients. The work that you do will attract the clients for you if you're doing it in the right way.
yeah, you're doubling up on the effort that you're already making and ensuring that has the biggest impact. I can only assume these six all have equal weighting and no one is more of a priority than the other. But I guess by sectioning them out, I can only imagine law firms will probably go, yeah, I know the area we need to focus on, or I know where our challenges really sit. So it's a great way to go, this is our priority, let's focus here first.
Yeah, I think there's usually a key area that's either lacking or is just an opportunity. And sometimes it's, if you are relatively confident that you've worked a lot on improving your firm, often it comes down to that know me piece. And okay, let's go out and do some client listening and really figure out what our key clients really want and need, and where the opportunity now is to take this from excellent to just outstanding, and just that really proactive anticipatory service that really hits those key targets. And then you can use all that knowledge to hone your literature and the way you market yourself to appeal to the exact same category of clients. So it just all begins to feel easier once you focused on those drivers.
You just mentioned client listening there. What does client listening really mean? I'm assuming you don't mean listen to them when they call you for an inquiry. Is that like a research piece or?
Yeah, so obviously listening deeply during inquiries is really, really important. But for me, client listening, some firms use the term client insight projects, is where you're really taking time out to interview key clients. And often you would get an external consultant like myself. Many other consultants offer a similar service, where you will put together really carefully crafted questions that not only just get feedback on, satisfaction levels, but really explore with them. Okay, we're a 9 or a 10 out of 10, brilliant, but what would take it to that level more? What else could we be doing? What's irritated you about services before? What opportunities are we missing? What could we be doing to make your life easier? And sometimes even the most satisfied, loyal of clients will come out with something that you just weren't expected, that ends up being a really rich opportunity that can be mirrored across that whole category of clients. So it's a really valuable exercise to do as a law firm.
We'll use the word again, curiosity. We'll just bring that back in. Um, this is probably a really difficult question, and I'm sorry to ask it, but I just have to. How can law firms make business development and client experience easy? Do you have any quick wins?
Well, I think if you've created time and space for people to actually do BD consistently, then the easiest way to make it easy is to focus on that 6 driver framework genuinely, because you can use those drivers and apply them to every single aspect, including business development, process improvement, employee experience, everything. So if we focus it on business development and look for those quick wins, or client experience, look for those quick wins, what will make it easy? So when somebody comes to our website, is it easy for them to contact us? Is it easy to see our value? Is it easy for them to make an inquiry? Is it easy to see the phone number? Is it easy for them to see what we offer? Is it easy to speak to someone, to budget for our costs, to understand the engagement letter, to understand the written advice? Is it easy for intermediaries to trust us with the higher value clients? If not, why not? We need to look at that piece. And so you'll find you identify those friction points that you don't even know you had. So even if it's a simple action of, okay, this well-oiled system that we rely on, perhaps it's an old method, but if we're not going to do anything else, let's look at it and say, what could we do to make it easier for our clients? We're targeting this specific category. Does this newsletter we're writing with all these case updates actually make anything easy for them in terms of the information they need, in terms of knowing whether they need our service? And if not, let's just tweak the language, let's rewrite it. There are always really easy wins in just adopting that one driver.
Yeah, I think um, simply looking at all of the touch points in the way clients can get in contact with you. Like, when was the last time you listened to your um, uh, reception phone call, or your voicemail, or your options on your phone when they call you? When was the last time you listened to that? It's a sort of great start point of what touch point and how would they have interacted with us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, of course, we've talked a lot about business development and sales and marketing, and how that all links together in order to get clients through the door. But to get that continuous piece, to get that cyclical piece of building that key relationship, what are the key principles in building that rapport and winning a client for life, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, it all fits together, doesn't it? And I think if we look at what rapport actually means, it's building a relationship where you mutually understand each other's feelings, you communicate well, and you have that mutual trust. So essentially, very similar to those 6 drivers. So how you build rapport during the process, you can use that to help you. But if we want to accelerate it and generate that sense of connection really early on in a relationship, or more deeply, more quickly, there are 4 other principles that we can use to really drill down into that connection piece. And again, they all feel so obvious when you say them, because the first one is, of course, empathy. And I think sometimes as lawyers, we kind of need permission to be empathic, because there's this front of professionalism that's gradually starting to drop away. But making your clients feel really understood and putting yourself in their shoes, like, what do they really need to hear? Can we listen deeply, reassure them, let them know that we understand how hard it is for them, but you're going to be helping them? Really, really important to connection and rapport. The second one, unsurprisingly, is authenticity, because actually when we let that, we need to be professional, but the professionalism is allowed some personality. So people are going to work with people they know, like, and trust. And they can't know, like you if they don't really know who you are. You are much easier to connect with than a faceless law firm identity. So don't be scared to show a little bit of who you are, a little bit of personality, and allow them to see authentically who you are in the workplace. The third one can be a little bit trickier, I think. So similarity breeds rapport really, really easily, and connection. So if there are interests, common life experiences, things that you like, shared hobbies, it makes it really, really easy for people to connect to you. So where you're networking and you clock things that are similarities between you, they're really good things to try and remember, so that next time you see them, you can go straight into conversation about something that's common ground. It makes it really, really easy. But actually, if that fails, even simple things like similar body language, speed of speech. If somebody talks very slowly, it might be an indicator that you don't need to insult them, but it might be helpful to just slow your speed slightly. I'm quite a fast talker, so sometimes I need to remember to just slow my pace a little bit so that people can take in what I'm saying at a speed that suits them. So similarity can mean lots of different things for clients. But even just reflecting the problems they're telling you about in an inquiry in the language that they're using can be really, really helpful to them to make sure they're following what you're saying. So similarity is important. And the fourth one is the biggest one if you only take one principle away in terms of rapport, and that's shared experience. So it's really easy. In the old days, we used to take clients out, we used to all get a bit sozzled. There'd be some funny things that happened, and you had this memory and this shared experience that kind of bonded you for years after. I will bump into people that had had a great night out at a client event and still remember something funny happening. But now we've got all these arm's length interactions. We don't do so much client entertainment. Sometimes we're a bit fearful actually of that. There's less shared experience. So we need to create a shared experience from the client journey. And where we are dealing with everything very efficiently by email or digitally or through a client portal, we're not necessarily having a shared experience of those ups and downs throughout the transaction. So helping them understand that you're in the corner fighting for them, you're chasing the other side. Even if there isn't an update, let's phone the client. I know this is really stressful. There isn't an update for you. I just want to let you know that I've chased the other side this morning. I've spoken to the estate agents or whatever the other parties might be. And, we're going to get this sorted out. Sharing in the highs of the transaction is really powerful and really memorable, because actually our brains are programmed to create more memories when something meaningful happens. So when somebody gets the keys to their first house, phone them and share that news that the keys are released with them so that you're involved in that experience. So there are lots of ways to create shared experience through events, through networking, through intermediaries. But even if you don't have time for that, just through the way you're dealing with the transaction and sharing the ups and downs is really simple, but really powerful.
Yeah, again, I think that links back to your point about being present and having the time to think about these things. Because it's not that we don't want to do them, it's just that they're never the top priority because there's already 10 million other things to be doing.
This is the problem, which is why time remains one of the biggest BD challenges. And I think we need to really teach people how to just cut so much of we work so hard as lawyers. We are so driven, but there is so much we're doing that just isn't quite pinpointed enough and targeted enough to have the impact we need. And I just really feel so strongly, so passionately about helping lawyers just calm their lives down so that we can really enjoy our industry, because we are losing really good people and everything can be a lot calmer and a lot easier. So yeah, I guess my driver is to make it easy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not just useful for the lawyer themselves, but that's useful for the firm. We know attracting talent is really hard right now. We know it's really expensive. We know we have to make do with what we've got. Resources are pretty scarce. So to empower employees to feel like that, have that time, have the right tools, could be revolutionary for long-term success.
Exactly. And I think even just from a retention point of view, it's really important to address that balance between having that positive culture, but also we still need to be making money as a business. So that people-centric versus business focus, we need to give our lawyers the tool to amplify the impact of what they're doing financially, profit making for the business as well as with the BD, because actually just the way we work and bill our work needs to be efficient, but we can help people with the tools to do that. We don't always just know. We're not born to know. So yeah, it's just a massive shift in the way we work, digitalization of relationships, and the value that we're delivering as lawyers, all coming at the same time, full force. So let's upskill our profession so that we can actually handle it without burning out.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a great way to end this episode. I couldn't have said it better myself. It's been such a great conversation with so many really good takeaways and examples to implement today to have an impact on the business development efforts that you're already having in place, but ultimately also your client experience that helps you keep those clients for life and helps with that cyclical impact of winning and keeping clients for long-term success. So thank you so much, Emma, for joining me today and sharing your experiences. It's been really great conversation.
Thanks for having me. I've loved it. Anybody that will listen, I love talking about stuff. So it's been an absolute pleasure, Amy. Thanks for having me.